Self-improvement through communication is not an easy task. It's a task you have to decide because you're going to have the conversation with yourself that a lot of us don't like having. Hello, everyone. My name is Laurent Mandela, as previously introduced. And I want to start by telling you, patience was taught to me by way of grief, and presence was taught to me by way of communication. What do I mean by that? 4 years ago, I was 24 years old, prior to the pandemic, living the life of a 24-year-old. I was immortal. You couldn't tell me I wasn't going to be the king of the world. The only problem was the world I was living in was only this big. I didn't understand what the real world was until I experienced true grief, losing my father. December 27th, 2019, my father passed away from sudden cardiac arrest. Me and my father, the best way to describe the relationship would be he was the compass in the middle of the desert while a tornado was happening and a hurricane was on the way. And then COVID hits. Double whammy. It was quite an interesting experience to experience as a 24-year-old. I had to figure out, how do I move forward without my North Star? How do I be there for my mother? How do I be there for my sister? How do I be there for my brother, who's also going through this? Although older, we're all suffering from this grief. It took me 3.5 years to grow enough the strength to become patient with myself, to stop pointing my fingers and saying, this person did that, this is because of what happened here, this isn't my fault, why? Why is all of this happening to me? It took me 3.5 years to start saying, what can I do? Now that's what taught me the patience with myself, that grief, that sorrow I sat with. What taught me presence was deciding that I wanted to self-improve. And in order to self-improve, I had to change the conversation that I was having with myself. I had to change the conversation I was having with the world, and I had to change the way I was listening to everyone around me. And that is why I decided to self-improve by means of communication. It was easy for me to tell myself that all of this was meant to happen, but it was harder to understand that what I want to happen depends on what I do now. Depends on what I do today, depends on what I do tomorrow. That's the only way for me to control my future, and that's the only control I have. And I learned that by watching my dad pass away, just like that. Self-improvement through communication is not an easy task. It's a task you have to decide because you're going to have the conversation with yourself that a lot of us don't like having. It's a very uncomfortable conversation. It's a very painful conversation, but it's also a very honest one. I sat with myself and I decided to do a 75-day hard challenge. This 75-day hard challenge, you had to commit to doing the same routine, which is prioritizing your decisions for 75 days. Now online, it'll tell you have these rules to follow. I say don't do that. I say you decide what can you do and commit to for 75 days so you can build trust in yourself again and build self-love. Going through that challenge, there were times I failed. But I knew that the best thing for me to do was not to start over or beat myself up. It was to continue because I was better than I was yesterday. And that all started because I changed how I was communicating with myself. And that conversation with myself said, hey, last week you couldn't even do this for 10 minutes. This week you did it for 5 minutes and 5 minutes and a half. The next week you did it for 10. The week after that, you did it for 20. And I kept having that conversation instead of saying, you failed, you failed, you failed. That muscle got stronger. And how I communicated with myself translated to how I communicated with one, and then how I communicated with many. As I finished my 75-day hard, I thought I was going to be a superhero. I thought I was going to be able to fly now. That's not what happened. I finished, and I was like, oh, I feel better, but not perfect. And I understood perfectionism isn't real, but the fear of failure is. And that's what keeps us stagnant. So as I learned how to have these better, more positive conversations with myself, I realized that 75-day hard wasn't, oh, I finished the challenge, now I'm the king. It's, I decided to re-identify and realign my life. And that's an ongoing process that made me adopt the growth mindset that I now have today. So here I am in Toastmasters, who lost his father 4 years ago. He still has an amazing mother. He still has an amazing big sister and an amazing older brother. But I had to figure out, who am I and what do I want? And I said, the best thing I can do is tell my story to help people learn that everyone has a story to tell. As I improved and as I grew, I learned how to tell my story. And the better I tell it, the better you can tell yours, and then we can make history together. Self-improvement through communication, it's not going to be easy. But through communication, collaboration, creativity, confidence, all of that is bred. And from there, the ceiling is limitless. Thank you.